Hi, everybody. Welcome to the April Supper Club. We hope you've had a good season. This is April's our last month together. We have been focusing this season on how do we bring our values that we talk about on Sunday into the rest of our week. And we have talked about parenting. We've talked about faith with parenting, bring our faith into our friendships, into our partnerships or marriage, and into work settings. So we've got one more month. This is the month that we're bringing it into our civic life, political life, and for that we
want to introduce you to the director of the Institute for Religion, Politics, and Culture at Iliff School of Theology, Reverend Amanda Henderson. We're so glad you're here with us.
Thank you.
We figure if we're going to have someone who is going to be with us to talk about religion and faith in politics and culture, you were the first person we thought of.
Oh, I'm grateful to be here, and you know that I love this congregation and love that you all do this. And this is where it starts. That piece of bringing yourself to civic spaces is around tables. So
that's right.
It's appropriate.
Well, we really are lucky to have. I mean, you hold a unique role at Iliff that not every community has, and so maybe just start with telling us a little bit about your work at the Institute.
Yeah. So after working as the executive director at Interfaith Alliance of Colorado for 7 years, I was working a lot directly with legislators and elected officials and helping people in faith communities across the spectrum to be able to bring their voices to the public sphere and to the political sphere. And in that work, so often I felt like political leaders often didn't actually really understand religion very well, and felt like too often that it was one of three options around religion, that either religion and religious ideas are dismissed as irrelevant, and it's dying, it doesn't matter, we're not going to pay attention to it, or really just perceived as toxic and really only having this religious right, Christian nationalist understanding of how religion and politics intersect and wanting to avoid that. Or a very transactional dynamic where it's like, okay, we need the religious voters.
Yeah, almost manipulating religion for your political purposes.
Exactly.
Which we all, I think, probably have some cynicism around that.
Yeah.
When we hear politicians.
But at the same time, I've spent so much time with political and advocacy leaders that I knew that actually many of them had very deep spiritual lives or had a background or had been raised in a faith community. And so it was a lot more complicated than any of those three options, that religion and politics, I feel like too often we have felt like we can put our religious self on a shelf. Oh, that rhymes. It's like the elf on a shelf, your religious self on a shelf, and that we can bring this other self that doesn't acknowledge that
Holy
aspect
other,
of ourself. And the reality is, it just doesn't work that way. That wherever I am, my spirituality, my understanding of God, the roots and the background that I learned as a child, those are with me. They shape how I see the world. They shape how I interact with other people. And so we started this institute to help people who are serving in public leadership particularly understand how to lead as whole people, and that it's possible to bring your whole self without crossing that line into a theocracy or pushing your religion onto another person or institutionalizing it. And so that's a key part of our work, is one, understanding the ways that religion historically and structurally functions in religion, as well as helping educate specifically public leaders so that they can be more effective in bringing social change and staying whole in the process.
I love that you're focusing on how to help them articulate their authentic religious voice and have that in the public sphere without it being manipulative or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a number of, Diana DeGette's a member here, Mike Johnston, who's running for mayor, is a member here. We've had a few through the years, and we know their faith is authentic, and I know it must be challenging for them to be out in the public world
Yeah.
navigating all that, and
Yeah.
religions can be so polarizing.
Yeah,
So,
and there are ways to do it, and I think that too often we've just been afraid to move into that space
Yeah.
to do it well, and so that's part of what I want to understand. And there have been so few models of people who have been able to bring their full self and their spirituality and the things that drive them and their values.
Right.
Framed in that way, but also making that pivot to that actually this is about being human and caring for one another, no matter what our religious traditions and backgrounds are, and being able to say, but this is what motivates me.
Right.
and here you're talking not just about political leaders, but all of us, just those regular folks. How do we bring that to our voting? You used that phrase when we were talking earlier. How do you vote from a place of love, or what was
Yeah.
that? To even just to think like that feels
Yeah.
different than to think about. Usually, when you get into the voter box, you're like, what's in it for me? What's in my best interest here? And that's often a different answer than from a place of love, right?
Yeah, exactly. That it's similar, this integrated self, and it sounds like that's what a lot of the conversations you've been having is
Right.
how do we experience God and live out our faith in ways that are integrated and connected and relational, and that happens in every sphere. And so in the political sphere and the civic sphere, how are we bringing the values that drive us and the things that we care about the most?
Right.
And for me, as a Christian, I can name that what drives me is love and the call to love our neighbors, to love others as you love yourself,
Right.
and that there's always that driver, and then asking that bigger question, what is love? And what does
Right.
love look like?
Right.
And what does my neighbor need
Yeah.
to experience love?
Right.
And some neighbors, some people in our community, love looks like a free school lunch.
Right,
Love
right,
looks
right.
like housing that allows me to not be in a constant state of stress and panic, knowing that my children will be cared for. That is love.
Yeah.
And so it's not one thing. And one of the things that I love playing with as someone learning about God and spirituality and relationships is asking that other person, what makes you feel loved? And that's a relational posture, and that happens in our civic life as well. And that means getting to know people who you don't know already, people who you might not interact with on a daily basis in our
Becoming neighbors, being real neighbors in our neighborhoods.
yeah.
Amanda, the thing that gets said all the time, and I would love to hear you answer it, what about the separation of church and state? And the fear people have around that, and that tagline is used all the time as a way of saying, bracket out your
Yes.
faith or your religious perspectives. But how do you talk about that?
I think it's such an important question, and I think that the separation of church and state is vital to our democracy in the piece that we aren't a theocracy. We were founded in the idea, we could get into the history and the struggle of it all, that we aren't a theocracy. And that was a very intentional decision that no one religious tradition or sect or doctrine is institutionalized and forced upon other people.
Right.
That's different than pretending like our religious selves don't exist. And so again, I think we've had a real lack of imagination of how to
Right.
bring our religious and spiritual selves to civic conversations, knowing we don't have to push that on someone else. And it is more complicated as we think about different traditions that is a driver to really evangelize. But even in those spaces, having a government institutionalized religion is different
Yes.
than being able to speak from your heart.
Right. It's testimony. It's giving witness to why do you do what you do? Where does that place of conviction come from? And being able to witness to it without saying, that needs to be yours too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also takes for granted, I guess, holds a Christian understanding of what religion is and a Protestant Christian religion, definition of what religion is, to think that it's only about your belief.
Right.
Because in most other religious traditions, religion is about what you eat. It's about when you pray. It's about what you wear. It's about how you care for one another, how you spend money, how you spend time.
So true.
And that the idea that religion is only about checking a box of what you believe.
You believe here, right, yeah.
Yeah, and so widening that definition of religion
great.
also really challenges our assumptions
That's
around
great.
the separation of church and state.
That's great. That's great.
Amanda, let's go at one other area of this that I know we all wrestle with, and that is the balance between engaging in what we know is important, these political issues, but given how divisive they are and often how toxic it is, also needing to take care of ourselves, and that balance and that dance that we all end up doing of how much media to take in, and on the other hand, perhaps getting so disengaged from it that that's not, at least not from our faith values. To not be engaged at all isn't okay either. How do you think about some of those?
Yeah, I
things?
think it's such an important question, and we hear about compassion fatigue, or similarly with so much being inundated with news and so much really difficult news that we just become overwhelmed and shut down. And so I think there's two first things that I would say are important to hold while we are doing that dance. And one is that we're not alone in this. And that it's from, when I step back and think about like the level of hubris to think that I'm needed in every one of these, that I can solve all of these world problems, that it's okay to step back and say, I can do the best I can in this space and really have an impact. And I can't solve all of the problems in the world or in my community or even in my neighborhood, but guess what? I don't have to, because Clover's working on them, and Ian's working on them, and my friend John is working on them, and we are all working on this together. And so when we need to step back and rest, we step back and rest, trusting that we are in this together, and that we are a part of a body of Christ, an interconnected community. So that's one piece that's really important. The other is that it's long haul work.
Yep.
And when I get overwhelmed and think I'm not having an impact, I'm not doing enough, I'll step back and I'll read history, and I'll read, especially I love reading womanist history and stories of Black women, stories of resilience and hope regardless, and keep plugging in this space with these people, and knowing that we are a part of something bigger, that those two foundational shifts help in that process of then for your own self, then it comes down to your own personal awareness of what's happening in my body when I'm too looped in.
Too much,
I'm so like fired up, angry, bitter.
Triggered all the time.
Triggered, like everything makes me angry, or
and
then
use that as a flag that something more is going on that needs attention.
Probably advice, and also if you're too disengaged, there's signs for that as well.
I'll notice like if I'm numbing, if I'm like sitting and flipping through Amazon unnecessarily, like, or spending my brain thinking about something that, I am checking out. And for a little bit, that's fine. Like we gotta, sometimes we gotta check out. That's the rest. But I know for me, I can get too comfortable in that place. And so it is a self-awareness of, okay, I'm ready to put my shoes back on, get back out there. And it's relational awareness, self-awareness. Also, that can be done in community with the people that you love, saying, time to step away a little bit.
Well, and I heard implied in what you said too, when you're stepping in, it doesn't mean you have to step into everything all the time.
Yeah.
You pick your area, somebody else is working on, but this sense that we need to be engaged with everything all the time and be on top of everything, it's exhausting, and we're not doing any good.
Yeah, we're actually feeding the toxicity.
Yeah, we become part of the problem.
I would love to have this conversation for a lot longer, but I think we need to
Time to wrap it up.
to wrap it up. But Amanda, this is so great to have you
thank you.
here.
I'm so
Thank
grateful.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
starting
Good
this
food for thought,
conversation.
yeah.
And I know the conversations at the supper clubs will be great.
Yeah.
We have a couple questions.
Yep. Okay. The first one, share an experience of a time where your faith did impact or influence a political decision or a vote you had or something like that. So sometime, think about a time where those two were connected for you. And then the second one is this last question or this last conversation about the dance between being engaged and disengaged, times of rest. And what are the signs for you when you're too engaged, and what are the signs for you when maybe it's time to step back in and you're a little disengaged from this good work?
Being in the world.
Yeah. So
We just also want to say this is your last supper
last
club.
supper
This
club.
is our last supper club filming, and I'm sad
crazy.
about that. But you all should know that Ian started this supper club program how many years ago? 15
We should have- yeah,
years?
probably about 15
Probably
years
about
ago.
15 years ago. This has been one of the most amazing programs that
been
Montby
great.
Church is, and
and some of there's a few that started with me in that.
and have been meeting ever since.
Yep, it's been great. So
Thank you.
Yeah,
We also want to encourage you that if this is the night or this is the time to talk about staying together next year or not. If you want to be part of a different supper club, that is totally fine. You can break up, and that's totally cool, and register for a new supper club, and that will start in the fall again. So we hope that it's been a good year. We think it's been a good topic.
it's been great.
Yeah, faith from Sunday into Monday, so it's been good.
Amanda,
All right.
thank you
Thank
again.
you.
Yeah, this is great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.